Have you noticed a loved one beginning to show subtle changes over the past year? Small shifts that made you pause and wonder. Perhaps it's a slower pace in their walk, a more distant gaze, or a kind of lingering fatigue without a clear cause. Many of us still believe that death in old age arrives suddenly, like a door that closes without warning. But the truth is often more delicate, more silent. The human body, especially in the later stages of life, tends to send quiet warnings, signals that can stretch on for months, sometimes even a full year before the final chapter truly begins. What's heartbreaking is that many people don't recognize these signals, not because they're careless, but because the changes are often too subtle to notice. Only when they look back do many families realize the clues had been there all along. But by the time they finally saw them, it was too late. Too late to prepare emotionally. Too late to hold on to those final, precious, meaningful moments with full awareness. That's why we need to be careful, observant, and truly understand what's unfolding before us. In today's message, we want to walk with you through 5 important signs. Changes that commonly appear within the year leading up to an elderly person's passing. Some of these signs may be ones you've seen or heard before, yet brushed off as just part of normal aging. Others may seem insignificant on the surface, but are in fact the body's quiet signals that it's entering a more fragile state. Recognizing these signs early is not about fear or panic. On the contrary, it gives you a chance to care more thoughtfully. It's a chance to slow down and truly cherish what matters, to be fully present in small conversations, in the gentle grip of a familiar hand, in one final affectionate smile that lingers just a little longer. Above all, it's how you can make sure your loved one's final months are filled with comfort, dignity, and peace. So please, we ask that you stay with us through the rest of this message. These 5 signs we're about to share are not just medical information. They are an emotional and practical roadmap to help you prepare for something no one wants to face, but everyone must eventually meet. Because when you understand what's really happening, you won't be caught off guard. You'll know how to love in the right way at the right time. And you'll learn how to turn the remaining time into the most precious gift for your loved one and for yourself.
Silent weight loss, when the body begins to speak. Have you ever noticed that an elderly loved one in your family is suddenly swimming in a shirt that used to fit just right? A familiar pair of pants now needs to be tightened a few notches to stay in place. At first glance, these changes might seem minor, and it's common for people to say, "It's just age. Older people tend to get thinner." But the truth is, sudden, unintentional weight loss, especially in older adults, can be an early sign that the body is entering a more fragile phase, perhaps even preparing for its final transition. It's not just aging, it's internal decline. The concern isn't just a few lost kilograms. The real issue lies behind the change. As people age, if someone starts eating less, loses their appetite, or no longer enjoys their meals, it may stem from the body no longer being able to absorb nutrients as efficiently as before. The digestive system slows down. Liver and kidney function decline. The body's ability to break down and process protein also begins to weaken. This leads to a gradual loss of muscle mass, a key factor in helping older adults maintain mobility, balance, and overall health. As muscle mass decreases, movement becomes more difficult. Falls and loss of control become more likely. The immune system weakens, and the body becomes more vulnerable to serious illnesses. Behind the weight loss may be hidden illness. What's even more concerning is that unintentional weight loss may be the first symptom of serious underlying health conditions you wouldn't expect. It could be a sign of silent cancer, chronic heart failure, kidney disease, or even cognitive decline like Alzheimer's. Additionally, many elderly individuals fall into a quiet depression, one that steals their interest in eating, socializing, or connecting with family without dramatic emotional displays. There are times when families try everything, preparing their favorite meals, giving nutritional supplements, consulting doctors, yet the weight keeps dropping. This doesn't mean your care isn't enough. It simply means their body is moving into a different state, slower, gentler, and preparing for a deeper rest. Don't force food. Listen to their body. At this stage, trying to force your loved one to eat large, nutrient-packed meals may only exhaust or frustrate them. Instead, shift the focus from eating enough to eating with ease and comfort. A warm spoonful of porridge, a soft slice of fruit, or a cool glass of milk, these simple things might be far more effective in helping them feel relaxed, cared for, and gently nourished. A quiet message from the body. Weight loss isn't always something to fear, but when it happens silently and persistently, especially in older adults, it's not just a matter of physical decline. It's a message the body is sending you. It doesn't call for panic or urgent intervention. Instead, it calls for closer attention, deeper presence, and a loving mindset that's ready for the journey ahead. This message from the body is quiet, but deeply meaningful. If you can hear it with compassion, you'll know it's not about giving up. It's about walking slowly, lovingly, beside someone you deeply care about as they prepare for the most peaceful part of their path.
Sign 2. Persistent fatigue, when the body no longer recovers the way it used to. Have you ever noticed that your elderly loved one seems more tired than before? Not just after a long day, but even after they've just woken up. This kind of exhaustion isn't the usual tiredness that follows activity. It's a deep, lingering weakness that doesn't go away, even with rest. At first, the fatigue may show up in small ways. They take longer to get out of bed, need to sit down after walking just a few steps, or become breathless simply from cooking a light meal. Then, gradually, things that once felt routine, chatting, reading, visiting friends, suddenly feel too overwhelming. The body is adjusting to conserve its final reserves. At this stage, the body no longer functions the way it once did. Instead of continuing to produce and spend energy through activity, it begins to shift into a conservation mode. The internal organs, heart, liver, kidneys, lungs, slow down, as if they are carefully preserving the final stores of energy for only the most essential functions. Circulation weakens. The amount of oxygen delivered to muscles and brain cells gradually decreases. That's why your loved one may begin to sleep more, stay awake less, and tire quickly without warning. A long midday nap or dozing off mid-conversation becomes more and more common. Physical fatigue also affects the spirit. One thing that's easy to overlook is how physical fatigue can also lead to quiet emotional hurt. Elderly people who once took pride in being independent, cooking their own meals, managing daily care, even driving themselves to the market, may now feel helpless as their strength no longer allows them to do the things they once did so naturally. This sense of helplessness can easily give way to frustration, shame, and withdrawal. They might slowly step back from conversations, avoid seeing people, turn down invitations, and close themselves off from the outside world. Not because they don't care anymore, but because they no longer have the energy to maintain the version of themselves that others are used to seeing. This is not laziness. It's a serious signal from the body. Sadly, many families witnessing this change misunderstand it. She's just being lazy, or he needs to keep moving or he'll get weaker. But the truth is, pushing them to stay active or stick to old routines is no longer the right approach. What they need now is not pressure, but understanding. Listen to what their body is telling you. I'm tired. I need rest. And the best thing you can do isn't to push them harder. It's to help them feel peace within their exhaustion.
turning fatigue into a gentle, sacred pause. If you notice your loved one falling into a state of persistent fatigue, don't ignore it. Instead, be present with them. Sit by their side, even if only in silence. Create an environment that's soft and soothing, gentle lighting, a quiet room, a familiar and calming scent in the air. Sometimes, just a hand lightly resting on their shoulder or a glance full of empathy is all it takes to let them know that they are still being held and supported, even in the most delicate days of their final chapter.
Sign 3. When memory fades and the world grows smaller. One quiet afternoon, you're chatting with your elderly loved one and suddenly realize they've just repeated a story they told only minutes ago. You pause and think, maybe it's just a little slip. But then it happens again, and not just once. They forget a family member's name, don't remember what day it is, or seem confused while sitting in their own home. These changes don't arrive like a sudden storm. They creep in gently, like morning fog, soft, quiet, and barely noticeable at first. And before anyone realizes, memory has begun to blur, and no one can quite say when it started. Cognitive decline, when the brain begins to slow down. As we age, the brain, just like every other organ, begins to lose some of its function. When blood circulation weakens, the oxygen and nutrients the brain needs are no longer delivered as efficiently. The ability to process information, retain memory, respond to others, and connect emotionally slows down significantly. This may manifest as forgetfulness, confusion, disorientation, or difficulty keeping up with a conversation. You might notice your loved one repeating the same question, struggling to recall familiar names, or losing track of time altogether. Sometimes they may seem completely lucid, but just a few hours later appear distant, vague, as though they're living in a world entirely separate from your own. This is not simply getting old. It may be an early sign that the body is quietly preparing to withdraw more deeply. Withdrawing, not from disinterest, but from exhaustion. Alongside cognitive decline, elderly individuals often begin to pull away from social interactions. They speak less, sit longer in silence, and seem uninterested in the activities that once brought them joy. This may cause concern among family members. Why doesn't she care anymore? Why is he so distant these days? But the truth is, they're not indifferent. They're tired. A fatigued brain no longer has the strength to process layers of sound, speech, or emotional nuance. Crowded gatherings become overwhelming. Even brief conversations become draining. So they retreat, not because they've stopped loving, but because they're simply protecting themselves in the only way they can. Shifting moods. It's not their fault. You may notice other subtle changes, increased irritability, anxiety, or the opposite, silence, detachment, and emotional flatness. Things that once made them laugh or smile no longer seem to matter. Beloved objects that were once cherished now sit untouched in a corner. This isn't coldness, it's the emotional world within them beginning to fade, just like their memory. And for family members, this may be one of the most heartbreaking stages, watching someone you love gradually grow distant in mind and spirit, even though their body remains with you. Meet them where they are. The most important thing now is don't try to pull them back. Don't bombard them with questions, correct their mistakes, or remind them again and again of things they can no longer recall. Instead, meet them where their mind currently resides. Sit quietly beside them. Hold their hand. Play an old song they used to love. These small, gentle acts may be the only remaining bridge between their world and yours. Even if they no longer remember your name, they can still feel the softness in your voice, the warmth in your presence,
and the comfort in your eyes. Give them peace, so that if their mind is slowly leaving, at least it leaves surrounded by love, not loneliness.
Sign 4. When the immune system slips away and recovery slows down. You may have seen this happen. A once healthy elderly loved one who rarely caught a cold in the past suddenly begins, over just a few months, to fall ill again and again. A lingering cough, repeated urinary tract infections, persistent skin irritations. What begins as a mild fever, a small cut, or a light bruise stretches on far longer than expected. You take them to the doctor, they get medication, but just when they seem to be getting better, the symptoms return. This is one of the signs that many people easily overlook or simply brush off as part of normal aging. But in truth, it might be the immune system's final whisper. I no longer have the strength to protect. The immune system is no longer what it used to be. In the later stages of life, the immune system, the body's natural defense barrier, gradually begins to weaken. The body is slower to recognize threats and slower still to respond. What once was just a minor cold or a harmless scratch may now take weeks to heal, or even evolve into something far more serious. Some infections become regular visitors. Colds, flus, pneumonia, urinary tract infections, mouth sores, skin infections. One illness hasn't even cleared before the next begins. Antibiotics that once worked well now seem to lose their edge. The body is no longer capable of healing itself the way it once did. Small wounds can speak volumes. Pay attention to the little things. A cut that won't heal, a sore that refuses to close, or a bruise that reappears in the same spot. These aren't just surface issues. They're signs that circulation is slowing down and that oxygen and nutrients aren't reaching the tissues like they used to. The organs responsible for recovery are no longer working at full strength. In those who are bedridden or rarely move, bed sores become a major concern, not just for the pain, but for the risk of severe infection if not managed properly. Infections in the elderly look different from those in the young. A person with pneumonia may not spike a high fever. Instead, they may just seem more tired than usual, eat less, or suddenly become confused. These are the body's early warning signs, but only those who are truly observant and present will recognize them. When healing is no longer the goal, but comfort is. Families will often do their best, more doctor visits, different prescriptions, hoping for one more treatment to turn things around. But there comes a point when you realize trying to cure is no longer what matters most. What matters is relieving pain, keeping the skin clean, keeping them hydrated, helping them feel physically comfortable, and most of all, helping them feel loved, cared for, and never abandoned, even in their most fragile moments. Letting go with grace, not giving up, but loving differently. If you notice that your loved one is repeatedly getting sick, taking much longer to recover, or simply passing through each wave of fatigue without complaint, don't dismiss it. It's not just recurring illness. It's the immune system's quiet farewell. And in that moment, the most precious thing you can do isn't to fight to hold them back, but to walk beside them, slowly, gently, lovingly, so they never feel alone in their final, weakening days.
Sign 5. When breathing changes and the blood slows down. One quiet evening, you're sitting beside your loved one's bed, and you suddenly notice something small. Their breathing is no longer steady. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes slow. At moments, they seem to pause for a few seconds before inhaling again. And suddenly, you feel your chest tighten. Because sometimes, a change in breath isn't just a physical occurrence. It's a quiet signal that the body is beginning to say goodbye. Subtle changes in breathing, but full of meaning. When someone reaches the final stage of life, breathing is often one of the most noticeable yet most overlooked signs of change. Breaths may become shallower, slower, or occasionally stop for a few seconds, then resume again, as if the body is resting before continuing on its journey. Some people experience what's known as Cheyne-Stokes breathing, a pattern of deep, rapid breaths followed by long pauses of no breath at all. You may find this frightening, but in reality, it's not something bad. It's the body's natural way of conserving energy, of slowing down, of letting go. It's how the body gently says, "I'm beginning to close." Slowed circulation, cold hands, cold feet. You touch their hands, their feet, and they're cold, not because the air is chilly, but because the blood is no longer prioritizing the areas far from the heart. The body begins to pull its flow inward, protecting only the most vital organs, the heart, the brain, the lungs. At this point, the hands and feet may become pale, bluish, or lightly purple around the fingertips. The ears, nose, and lips may also feel cool to the touch. This isn't a sign to panic. It's a soft release, the body trying its best to maintain life in the most natural way. Shortness of breath, even with the smallest movements. In this phase, even the most basic activities, talking, shifting position, or simply sitting up, can cause your loved one to feel out of breath. They breathe through their mouth more frequently. They may have to pause mid-sentence just to catch up. In some cases, fluid begins to build up in the lungs, causing a persistent cough, wheezing, or a tight, heavy feeling in the chest. And you might notice that they no longer want to lie flat. Instead, they prefer to sit slightly tilted, prop themselves up with pillows, or lean back in a reclining chair, not because they're uncomfortable, but because it helps them breathe more easily. This isn't a time for big fixes, but for gentle presence. When families see these changes, it's natural to feel alarmed, to reach for the phone, call a doctor, search the symptoms online, or look for an oxygen tank. But the truth is, sometimes there's nothing that needs to be fixed anymore. At that point, what matters most isn't restoring perfect breaths, but helping your loved one feel safe through every uneven one. A cool room, a warm cloth, a small sip of water, or simply your calm, reassuring gaze. Sometimes that's all they need. Breath is life, and the final breath is a whisper of release. If you see your loved one breathing more slowly, more weakly, their skin cooler, their lips paler, please don't be afraid. The body is closing itself gently, like the sun setting quietly behind a hill. And in that sacred moment, the most precious thing you can do is not to pull them back, but to sit beside them, hold their hand, whisper softly, "It's okay now. I'm here," and let them know in that final breath they are not alone. Conclusion: when love is no longer holding on, but letting go together. In the journey of being a child, a grandchild, a companion to aging parents or grandparents, perhaps nothing is more difficult than witnessing them slowly drift away, not in a single moment, but little by little. Unintentional weight loss, deep fatigue, cognitive decline, recurring infections, and changes in breathing and circulation. These 5 signs, though seemingly separate, are in fact pieces of a larger picture, a picture of transition, of the body gently closing the final chapter of life. But you know, this isn't a sentence of loss. It's a gentle reminder that it's time to slow down, to love more deeply, and to be more fully present. Because once you recognize these changes, you will no longer be caught off guard or overwhelmed. You'll stop trying to pull them back into the rhythms of the past, and instead, you'll learn to walk more slowly beside them, gently, steadily, and with deep compassion. Look at their shoulders, the very ones that once carried the weight of years spent raising and protecting you. Hold their hands, the hands that once led your first steps, and sit beside them, not with fancy words or grand promises, but with your presence, your tenderness, and your gratitude. This is the stage where one spoonful of warm porridge, one gentle, easy breath, or one quiet smile in the afternoon light becomes nothing short of a miracle. Now, the best kind of care isn't found in advanced medicine or modern machines. It's found in the way you listen, the way you love at the right moment, and the way you let go without ever letting them feel abandoned. So if you are noticing these signs in someone you love, don't just think of what's ending. Think of the rare gift you've been given. A chance to say the words that were never said. A chance to hold someone longer than usual. A chance to wrap these remaining days in respect, peace, and unshaken connection. None of us are ever truly ready for the end, but all of us can be ready for a beautiful ending if it is lit by the light of understanding, patience, and a heart that knows how to love. And if you are walking with someone through this final stretch, please remember, they don't need you to be strong for them. They just need you to be there, with them, like a small, steady candle, burning with them until the very last moment. Because the boundary between life and farewell is not a wall, it's a door, and love is how you open that door, gently,